Ignore this principle. In Eva Hartley's Manifest and Receive, repeat the same life. There is a moment which doesn't appear clearly in the book, but it's implicit in every concept. The moment when protesting ceases to be a practice, and it begins to be an identity. And when that happens, reality is starting to respond differently. Not because you're doing more, but why did you stop resisting? Most people read Manifest and Receive by Eva Hartley and try to apply it as a technique, but the book was never about technique. It has always been about inner transformation, the limits of manifestation as a technique. Most people begin the journey believing that manifestation is something you do, a technique, a method, a set of steps, and that's not entirely wrong. Techniques can open internal doors. They can teach focus, they can help to reorganize thinking, but there is an invisible limit, because techniques operate on the surface of the conscious mind, while identity operates at the level where automatic decisions are born. You can apply the technique for a few minutes, but identity services operate 24 hours a day. And that's why some people are able to see small results, but they are unable to sustain major changes. They are able to attract, but they can't maintain it. They are able to achieve, but they can't normalize it. And this is where many people begin to feel silent frustration, because externally it looks like it's working. But internally, there's still a feeling of, this isn't really for me. And when that feeling exists, the brain begins to look for ways to return to the previous state, not because they want to sabotage you, but because it wants to maintain internal consistency. The brain prefers a predictable reality, even if it's not the reality you want, and it is precisely here that Manifest and Receive in the vision proposed by Eva Hartley. This implies a much deeper change. It's not about using protests as a tool. It's about allowing expression to become an internal language. The internal compatibility point. There is a specific moment where something silently changes inside you. It's not dramatic, it's not explosive, it's not emotionally exaggerated, it's subtle, but extremely powerful. It's the moment when desire stops seeming distant, and it's starting to seem like something possible, then plausible, then naturally. Internal compatibility occurs when you no longer need to convince your mind that something can happen. You start to feel that it simply makes sense for your life. And when that happens, something changes in the way you perceive opportunities. Situations that previously seemed unattainable, they are starting to seem affordable. Conversations that once seemed intimidating, they are starting to look normal. Environments that previously seemed not for you, They are starting to seem possible. And this happens because perception is filtered by identity. When identity changes, perceived reality changes. And when perceived reality changes, behavior changes without conscious effort. And when behavior changes, results are starting to follow suit. This is the point where manifestation stops looking like something you're trying to create, and it starts to look like something you're allowing to exist. Three, the invisible fear of identity change. There is an extremely human aspect to it, which is rarely discussed. Many people are not afraid to fail. They are afraid of what will happen if it works out, because success changes social dynamics. It changes external expectations. Internal responsibility changes. It changes how you see yourself. And identity change is, for the brain, uncharted territory. And the brain doesn't just measure what's best, it measures what is predictable. If your identity was built around constant struggle, calm might seem strange. If your identity was built around scarcity, abundance can seem unstable. If your identity was built around proving your worth, receiving without effort may seem dangerous. And that's why many people come close to big changes, and unconsciously they slow down. Not because they don't want to, but that's because they still don't feel safe being that new version of themselves. And that is one of the most profound aspects of true transformation. Demonstrations aren't just about attracting something new. It's about feeling safe while living this new reality. 4. The moment where everything becomes calm, deep version. There is a very strong myth surrounding the demonstration, the idea that the turning point will feel like euphoria, but most of the time, he seems calm, an unsettling calm. A feeling that you no longer need to fight mentally all the time. A feeling that you no longer need to convince yourself. It's as if something inside was saying, that's already possible. And when that happens, the sense of urgency is starting to disappear. And when the urgency disappears, resistance decreases. And when resistance decreases, clarity increases. And when clarity increases, decisions become simpler. And when decisions become simpler, results begin to fall into place naturally. This is the moment when protesting stops being about creating reality, and it starts to be about allowing a compatible reality to emerge. And that's why some people describe the turning point as something silent, not like an explosion, but for sure. 5. Neurological signs of the switch. When identity begins to change, the signs don't first appear in the outside world. They appear within your mental experience. You start to notice something different. You don't react with the same level of anxiety as before. You don't feel a constant need to prove that something is going to happen. You don't spend your time checking external signs for every little thing in life. A type of emotional stability begins to emerge, and that is extremely powerful. Because emotional stability reduces mental noise, and when mental noise decreases, the brain is better able to focus on real opportunities instead of getting stuck in imaginary scenarios of fear or scarcity. Another important sign: you start acting differently without realizing that he is acting differently. Decisions that once seemed risky, they are starting to look natural. Conversations that used to generate fear, they are starting to look normal. And this happens because identity has already begun to reorganize itself. In the implicit logic that many associate with Eva Hartley's vision in Manifest and Receive, the mind doesn't react to what you want it to. She reacts to what you consider normal for you, and when the internal norm changes, behavior changes on its own. 6. Why reality is starting to respond faster. Many people ask, why do some people seem to manifest much faster? The answer is rarely found in the intensity of the effort. She is lacking internal resistance. When there is internal conflict, a part of you moves forward, another part pulls back. But when identity begins to align with desire, mental energy stops being divided. And when mental energy stops being divided, focus increases, clarity increases, the perception of opportunity increases. And this creates something extremely important: speed of decision-making, and a quick decision. At the right times, it completely changes the course of life. Reality doesn't change just because you think positive. It changes because you start interacting with the world in a different way, and the world responds to this new interaction. 7. Daily micro-shift. Many people seek out complex exercises, but profound change often begins with simple questions, questions that change perspective. One of the most powerful is, if this were already a natural part of my life, how would I react today? Observe the depth of this. It's not about forcing behavior. It's about allowing the brain to experiment with new internal responses. And the repetition of these micro-responses creates new neural patterns. With time, what seemed to be acting differently, it simply starts to seem like being you. And that's how identity changes, not in a giant moment, but in thousands of invisible micro-decisions. 8. The role of emotional security in the manifestation. There is a profoundly deep truth here. You only hold on to what feels emotionally safe. You can desire something intensely. But if emotionally it seems like that, unstable, risky, insecure, uncomfortable, the mind creates invisible resistance. Sometimes this appears as procrastination. Sometimes it appears as a constant doubt. Sometimes it appears as subtle sabotage, not because you want to fail, but that's because the brain wants to protect the known state. And that changes when the new reality no longer seems like a threat, and it starts to look like a natural environment. 9. The secret of naturalness. Naturalness doesn't come from repeatedly convincing yourself. It stems from emotional familiarity. The brain loves what is familiar, even if it's not ideal. That's why emotional repetition is so powerful. When you repeat internal experiences of security, permission, acceptance, possibility, the brain begins to classify this as safe. And when something is classified as safe, he stops resisting. And when resistance disappears, the flow begins. And that's the point where protesting stops looking like effort, and it starts to seem like a natural consequence of who you are. 10. What Eva Hartley really points out, there is something very subtle within the central message associated with manifest and receive. It's not just about wanting something badly enough. It's not just about visualizing clearly enough. And it's definitely not just about repeating statements. The most important point is internal compatibility. The idea that you don't express what you want with greater intensity. You manifest what you allow yourself to sustain, and that completely changes the logic, because it removes the manifestation from the realm of mental experimentation, and it places it in the realm of emotional identity. In a deeper reading of the philosophy that many people associate with Eva Hartley, manifesting is not about bringing something new into your life. It's about allowing your life to reorganize itself around what is already compatible with who you are becoming. And that is extremely powerful, because it means that real change doesn't begin in the external world. It begins with the silent sensation of, this can already be a part of my life. 11. The moment where desire becomes the standard. There is a very specific point where I want to stop it from seeming like a distant goal, and it's starting to look like an internal standard. You don't think about it all the time. You don't feel a constant sense of urgency. You don't feel anxious trying to control every detail. You simply start acting like someone who considers that possible. And this point is much more powerful than it seems. because behavior begins to align with this new perception. And behavior creates reality. Not because there is external magic, but because perception plus decision plus consistent action. They change their life trajectory. When desire becomes an internal pattern, you no longer struggle to believe. You just accept it. 12. Why do some people back down? This is an extremely human point of view. Not all transformation is linear. Sometimes when reality starts to change, the mind goes into a state of alert, because real change means losing one's old identity, changing relationships, change social dynamics. Change how you see yourself, and this can cause deep discomfort. Some people come very close to real change, and they slow down unconsciously. They revert to familiar patterns, because familiarity seems safe, even if it limits growth. And that's why emotional consistency is so important. Profound change doesn't happen in a single moment of clarity. It happens when the new identity starts to seem safer than the old one. 13. Real acceleration, when everything starts to flow. There is a moment where progress no longer feels like constant effort, and it starts to look like a natural movement. Not because challenges disappear, but why do you react differently to them? You stop interpreting obstacles as proof of failure. And he begins to interpret it as a natural part of the journey. And this change changes everything, because it reduces emotional strain. And when emotional strain decreases, clarity increases, persistence increases, adaptability increases. And this creates something extremely powerful: speed of evolution. That's why some people seem to speed up suddenly. In truth, they simply stopped fighting against who they were becoming. 14. The end point of the attempt: assumed identity. There is an end point to the attempt. It doesn't mean stopping. It means stopping trying to prove to yourself that something is possible. You begin to act from a different inner place, a place where you're no longer trying to convince yourself. You are operating from acceptance, and acceptance generates emotional stability, and emotional stability generates consistency, and consistency changes destiny. This is the point where protesting stops being something you do occasionally, and it becomes the way you live. Perhaps the biggest secret was never how to manifest. Perhaps it has always been how to become someone who can receive without resistance. If you feel you are reaching that point, comment, ready to receive.